My name is Eli Warner. You think your family has secrets? 17 years after my mother disappeared without a word, I got a letter, one that dragged me back to Shade Gap, Pennsylvania. She said she was dying. Said I needed to know the truth. What I found wasn't just the reason she left. But who I really am. Turns out, I'm the son of a man who ran half this town, and the brother of someone who'd do anything to keep that power. Now, I'm not just fighting for answers, I'm fighting for my name, my legacy. And my mother's life, because in Shade Gap, blood isn't thicker than secrets. If you love true-sounding stories filled with dark family secrets, betrayal, and revenge that'll keep you guessing until the very end, hit that like button. Subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story that hits this deep, and stick around, because this one, it starts with a letter, and ends with blood. Welcome back to the story. The snow fell in sheets that morning, thick, blinding, relentless. The kind of snow that buried memories if you let it. I was loading firewood into the back of my truck when I noticed it. A flash of white against the mailbox. Not junk. Not a bill. A letter. Real paper, torn at the edge, damp around the corners like it had sat too long in the cold, no return address. Just my name. Eli Warner, in tight cursive I hadn't seen since I was 12, I stood there for a long time, the wind biting at my ears. The snow creeping down my collar, staring at that name like it might catch fire in my hands. Inside, I dropped it on the kitchen table, beside the cracked salt shaker and the worn ashtray I hadn't emptied in days. I stared at it. Drank half a cup of black coffee. Lit a cigarette. Then finally opened it. If you're reading this, I must have found the courage to reach you after all these years. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do need you to come home. My health is failing. The doctors say I don't have much time. Before I go, I want you to know the truth. About everything, about me, your father, and who you really are, one weekend. That's all I ask. Come to Shade Gap. Come home, love, Mom. My hands tightened around the paper. Mom, the word felt foreign in my mouth. I hadn't spoken it in nearly 2 decades. She'd left on a Monday morning, the day after my 12th birthday. No note. No goodbye. Just a gaping hole in the house where her voice used to live. My father, mean, bitter. And always half drunk, never spoke her name again, and now she wanted me to come home. To Shade Gap. A town I'd sworn off like a bad habit. I folded the letter and sat back in my chair, letting the silence stretch around me. The snow ticked softly against the windowpane. Why now? Why 17 years later? What truth could she possibly tell me that would make any of this make sense? Still, something pulled at me. Not guilt. Not nostalgia. Just the gnawing feeling that whatever she had to say, whatever secrets she buried, weren't going to stay buried much longer. I lit another cigarette with shaking hands. One weekend, what the hell did I have to lose? The further I drove into central Pennsylvania, the quieter the world became. Pines lined both sides of the road like sentries, tall and unmoving, their branches heavy with snow. Cell service dropped before I passed the sign that read Welcome to Shade Gap, founded 1801. The paint was chipped, and someone had shot a hole through the in gap. That felt about right. 17 years. 17 years since I watched my mother walk into a snowstorm and vanish. Now, here I was, rolling back into a town that had no place for me. Nothing had changed. Not the gas station with the flickering open sign. Not the abandoned feed store with its boarded-up windows. And not the eyes I could feel on me as I passed the diner where the same pickup truck sat out front every morning, every season, like props in a bad play. I turned onto Licking Creek Road, the tires crunching against the frozen gravel, and my gut twisted with every mile. Shade Gap was the kind of town where people didn't just know your business, they memorized it. The Warners had been dirt poor and trouble-prone. And I knew damn well they hadn't forgotten, neither had I. When I was a kid, I used to bike this road every Sunday to clear my head after my father's fists found new reasons to hurt me. Sometimes Mom would meet me at the old bridge and sneak me candy from church. Sometimes she'd have bruises too, by the time I pulled up to her house, if you could still call it that, the sky had darkened to a deep gray. The place looked smaller, like it had shrunk without her in it. The porch sagged hard to the left. Shutters hung crooked. An old wooden swing, cracked and split, creaked gently in the wind like it remembered better days. I killed the engine and just sat there, so much of me wanted to drive away. Leave the ghosts where they belonged, but then the front door opened. She stood there wrapped in a faded flannel coat and a red scarf, thinner than I remembered. Her silver hair was pulled into a braid that hung over one shoulder. Her eyes, those pale green eyes I carried too, met mine. We stared at each other for a long moment. Then she stepped out onto the porch, her voice catching the wind. "Eli." I opened the truck door and stepped into the cold. The snow was softer here, muffled underfoot. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, hands twisting in the hem of her coat. "I almost didn't," I replied. "But you said you had answers." Her mouth pressed into a line. "I do. But not all of them are easy to hear." I looked at her house, her eyes. "This cursed town." "Good," I said. "I didn't come for easy." The heat inside the house barely worked. Radiators hissed in the corners like dying snakes, and the air smelled of old dust and something floral, lavender maybe. It was the same house, but time had gnawed at everything. The wallpaper peeled in long strips. The floorboards groaned beneath every step. Even the picture frames looked tired. She poured tea like we were strangers meeting for the first time. "Kitchen's the only warm place left," she said. Her voice was softer than I remembered. Fragile. I sat at the table where she used to braid my hair before school, where my father once slammed a beer bottle just to watch her flinch. Her hands trembled as she passed me the mug. "I didn't touch it. I'm sorry," she began. "For leaving. For all of it. You could have written," I said. "You could have come back for me." She nodded, eyes glassy. "I know." The silence stretched until the radiator gave a final groan and settled into stillness. "I stayed away because I thought I was protecting you," she said at last. "From your father. From the truth." I leaned forward. "Then give me the truth. All of it." She looked away. "You were never his," she said. "Ernie. He wasn't your real father." I didn't react. Deep down, I think I always suspected. I didn't look like him. Didn't sound like him. Didn't feel like him. Then who? I asked. Her lips parted, but the words seemed to struggle on the way out. "Calvin Yoder." I blinked. "What?" "Calvin," she repeated, quieter. "He was your real father." I stared at her. "You mean the Yoders? The ones with the farms, the lumber yard, the money?" She nodded slowly. "He was married. Said he'd leave her. Promised me a life. Then I got pregnant. And he disappeared." My head buzzed. Calvin Yoder had been a legend in Shade Gap, wealthy, respected, a man who shook hands at church and had half the town in his pocket. He died over a decade ago, heart attack in a hotel outside Altoona. No scandal ever made it out. "You're lying," I said, the words sharp. "I wish I was," she whispered. "Ernie found out. I thought he'd kill me. He nearly did." She stood and pulled up the sleeve of her sweater. Faint, jagged scars traced her forearm, too clean to be accidental. Too old to be recent. I stayed with him because I was scared. And when I finally ran, I figured it was safer if you hated me. I looked at the tea. Still untouched. Still warm. "You think dropping this on me makes things better?" I asked. "No," she said. "But there's more. And it's not just about you or me anymore." I narrowed my eyes. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. Her voice lowered to a near whisper. "Calvin had another son. Thomas. And he knows who you are." The name Yoder hung in the air like smoke, thick, clinging, choking. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process it all. Calvin Yoder wasn't just some ghost from Shade Gap's past. He'd been my father. And now his real son, Thomas, apparently knew I existed. That made me a problem. Maybe even a target. How long has he known? I asked. My mother wrapped her arms around herself like the truth had made her cold. A year, maybe more. Someone must have told him. He started sending people to watch the house. At first it was just parked cars across the road, lights in the woods at night. Then it got worse. Worse how? Dead birds nailed to the porch. My tires slashed. Someone left a bullet casing in the mailbox. I looked out the kitchen window. The snow had softened the landscape, made the world look peaceful. But I knew better. In Shade Gap, the dirt was full of secrets, and the trees whispered to those who listened, "You should have called the sheriff." She laughed bitterly. Sheriff Rittenhouse. He's been on the Yoder's payroll since high school. Calvin paid his way through academy training. Thomas throws him a few grand every election cycle to keep things quiet. Of course he did. That's how this town worked, legacy, not justice. Bloodlines, not truth. What does Thomas do, exactly? I asked. Run the family business? He is the business now, she said. Inherited everything. The land, the dairy co-op, the sawmill. He even bought the church last year. Renovated the steeple. Made a big show of it in the local paper. I scoffed. Sounds like a real man of God. Don't be fooled. Thomas isn't like Calvin. He doesn't just want control, he wants silence. He sees you as a threat, Eli. A stain on the legacy. I don't want his land. I said. Or his money. I just want the truth. She reached into a drawer and pulled out an envelope, thick, sealed, yellowed with time. What's that? Calvin's original will. The one naming you as his heir. He wrote it before Thomas was born. When he still believed in a future with me. He never filed it officially, but I kept it. Just in case. I took the envelope, my hands suddenly clammy. Inside was something that could tear Shade Gap open at the roots. Does Thomas know about this? I don't think so. But if he ever finds out. She stopped, swallowed hard. You need to be careful. Yoder men don't lose quietly. I tucked the envelope into my coat pocket, the weight of it anchoring me. For the first time since I stepped foot in Shade Gap, I wasn't just a visitor, I was a threat, and this land, this legacy, had more than bones buried beneath it. It had a name, mine. The knock came just after midnight, not loud. Not rushed. Just two slow, deliberate raps against the back door, like whoever was on the other side wasn't in a hurry. Like they knew I'd open it, I moved quietly down the hall, barefoot on creaking floorboards, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't turn on any lights. Just reached for the baseball bat I kept beside the fridge. It was old, splintered from years of disuse, but solid enough to break a jaw. The knock came again. Soft. Confident, I peeked through the curtain. A man stood on the porch, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a black wool coat that hung down to his knees. His dark hair was slicked back, face clean-shaven, sharp. Even in the dim moonlight, I could see the smirk forming on his lips. Thomas Yoder. I opened the door just enough to speak through the screen. You're trespassing. He smiled like I'd just told a joke. And you're digging where you don't belong, he said. Figured we should meet. I didn't invite you. Didn't need to, he replied. This whole county belongs to me one way or another. He stepped forward, the porch groaning under his boots. The screen door creaked with tension between us. Nice place, he said, glancing around. Shame it's barely standing. You know, if you'd stayed gone, I might have helped fix it up. But now. He shrugged. I tightened my grip on the bat. You think you scare me? I think you don't understand what's coming, he said, his voice cool. That envelope you're carrying, Calvin's old will, it's a ghost. It holds no weight. The only thing keeping it dangerous is you. I don't want your money, I said. Or your land. He leaned in closer, eyes hard now, doesn't matter what you want. It's what other people think you'll do. What rumors can stir. Shade Gap runs on fear and loyalty, and you threaten both. I didn't back down. You going to kill me, Thomas? Right here on Mom's porch? He chuckled. No. Not tonight. Wouldn't be polite. Then his voice dropped, low and venomous, but if you keep stirring the past, people will get hurt. Accidents happen. Fires start. People go missing. Ask your mother what happened the last time someone crossed a Yoder. My blood ran cold. I don't need to threaten you, Eli. I am the threat. He turned and stepped off the porch, boots crunching in the snow. Before disappearing into the dark, he looked back over his shoulder. You should leave town. Before the dirt decides to bury you too. The wind picked up as he vanished into the trees, but I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Just stood there with the bat in one hand and the weight of something darker settling on my shoulders. He knew, and now he'd warned me, in his own twisted, polite way. The war had begun. I woke just after dawn. The kind of waking where something feels wrong before your eyes are even open. The house was too quiet. No clatter of dishes in the kitchen. No kettle whistling on the stove. Just the cold creak of old beams and the low groan of wind pressing against the windows. Mom. I called out, nothing. I pulled on my boots and walked room to room. Her bed was made, tightly, like she hadn't slept in it at all. Her coat was gone. But her keys were still on the hook. So was her purse. I stepped outside. The backyard was blanketed in snow, but near the garden shed, something wasn't right. I followed a trail of broken footprints, hers, maybe two sets, partially filled in by fresh flurries. The snow there was disturbed, wide drag marks leading to the tree lean, like someone had been pulled. I followed them until the tracks vanished where the woods thickened. The air was heavy, still, like the trees themselves were holding their breath. A boot print. Large. Deep. Heading back toward the road, I turned and ran. Sheriff Rittenhouse showed up an hour later, driving slower than the snow called for. He was a round man with a sun-damaged face and tired eyes that didn't match the badge on his chest. I'd known him as a kid. He used to buy smokes from the back of my dad's truck. She probably went into town, he said, peering around the porch like he was inspecting a yard sale. She didn't, I snapped. There was a struggle. Out back. She's gone. He gave a tired sigh, adjusted his belt, and finally walked to the edge of the yard. Don't see much here. Snow's already covered most of it. Could have been a coyote, maybe a deer trail. You think a deer dragged my mother off into the woods? He looked at me, eyes blank. You said she's been ill. Maybe she wandered off. With no coat. No keys. He scratched his chin, clearly not interested in an actual investigation. I'll file a report. We'll keep an eye out. You won't find her that way, I said through gritted teeth. You know who took her. He raised a brow. Careful with accusations like that. The Yoders are respected folks around here. I stepped closer, toe to toe. You mean feared? There's a difference. He held my stare for a second too long before turning away. I'll call if anything turns up, he muttered, already climbing back into his cruiser, and just like that, he was gone. Taillight swallowed by the morning fog, I stood in the driveway, fists clenched, breath burning in the freezing air. She was gone. Vanished like smoke, but this time, I knew better. She didn't run, she was taken, and the only man with the power, and motive, to make her disappear, Thomas Yoder. The courthouse in Shade Gap hadn't changed in 50 years. A squat red brick building with green shutters and the stink of mildew baked into its walls. The clerk at the records office was a thin woman named Darlene, with stiff hair and eyes that had seen too much. She didn't ask why I was there. Just gave me a once-over, then pointed toward the microfilm room. You got 30 minutes, she said. Then Judge Runkles got the space. I nodded and got to work. The Yoder name was everywhere, in land deeds, business licenses, marriage records. It was like paging through a dynasty carved into paper. I found Calvin Yoder's death certificate filed in 2013. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. No autopsy. No foul play suspected. Thomas Yoder, next of kin and sole heir, but it was what I didn't find that caught my attention. There was no record of any earlier will on file. No acknowledgement of a firstborn child. No mention of my mother, which meant one thing, the copy she gave me. The one hidden for all these years, was the only surviving evidence of Calvin's intent. I left the courthouse and drove straight to the town's only notary, Mr. Halpern, whose office was tucked behind the old post office. He was in his 70s, half blind, but sharp when it counted. He read the will twice, lips moving silently, before looking up at me. This signature. It's Calvin's, he said slowly. No doubt in my mind. You're sure? I signed off on every one of his property transfers from 86 to 97. I'd recognize that scrawl anywhere. He set the paper down carefully, like it was a bomb. Where'd you get this? My mother kept it. She's smart. If this ever saw daylight, Thomas would have done anything to keep it buried. I nodded, jaw tight. He already has. Halpern sighed, sat back in his chair, and scratched at the liver spots on his hand. Legally, if this is authentic, and I believe it is, you have a claim. A strong one. But making that public? That's another matter. Because of the Yoders. He didn't deny it. They own half the town, he said. And the other half's too scared to cross them. You'd need proof beyond the will. Something solid, financial records, witnesses. Otherwise, Thomas'll bury you in lawyers before you get a foot in court. I folded the document, tucked it back into the envelope. I'm not looking for a court fight. I just want my mother back. Halpern looked me in the eye. Then you better be careful, son. Because this paper. He tapped the envelope. This is a fuse. And Shade Gap's been dry kindling for years. I left the office with my coat zipped tight, the wind colder than before. In my pocket, I held a piece of paper that could tear the Yoder legacy in half. Firstborn, rightful heir. I wasn't just a threat anymore, I was proof. The fall festival was the biggest event Shade Gap had. Bonfires, hayrides, boiled cider in styrofoam cups, and the scent of burnt caramel thick in the air. They held it in the same spot every year, Yoder's Field, Thomas Yoder's land. Poetic, in a way. I kept to the shadows, hoodie up, head down. No one recognized me, or if they did, they looked away. The town had a way of pretending things were fine, even when they were rotten from the inside out. The corn maze was the final attraction, acres of 7-foot stalks, paths carved out like veins through a golden heart. At night, with the moon overhead, it became something else entirely. A trap, exactly what I needed. I waited until Thomas was 3 drinks deep, laughing near the pie-eating contest, before slipping him the note. No name. Just a message, come to the north end of the maze. Alone. We need to finish this. I watched him read it. Watched his smile fade. He pocketed the note and headed toward the field. I went in through the east side, heart pounding with every step. The stalks whispered as I passed. I clutched the envelope with the will inside, sweat slick on my palms despite the cold. The north end was quiet. No children. No workers. Just dirt paths and moonlight. I waited. 10 minutes later, I heard his boots crunching the soil. Thought you might be too scared to show, he said. I'm not scared of you. He stepped into view, sleeves rolled, tie undone, the air of a man who thought nothing could touch him. You've made a mess, he said. Stirred up stories that should have stayed buried. You took my mother. He raised an eyebrow. Prove it. I pulled out the envelope and tossed it at his feet. He didn't pick it up. Didn't need to. He'd seen it before, I want her back, I said. He tilted his head, smirking. And if I say no? I tell everyone. File the will. Bring the Yoder name down brick by brick. For a moment, his eyes changed, no more smugness. Just something cold. Calculating. You think Shade Gap cares who gets what in a will? He asked. You think they'll cheer when the bastard son of a married man comes crawling for a piece of land he never earned? I don't care about the land, I snapped. I care about her. About the truth. He stepped closer, voice low. She's alive. For now. But if you take one more step toward the edge of this, she disappears forever. Understand? I lunged. He was fast, but I was faster, slammed him into the stocks, fist at his collar. Tell me where she is. Too late, he spat. You came to burn the house down. Don't be surprised when it collapses on both of us. We stared each other down, both breathing hard. The wind picked up, the corn swaying like it wanted to swallow us whole. I let him go, not because he won, because now I knew, she was alive, and I was running out of time. The storm hit just after midnight, wind tore through the trees like something unhinged. The lights flickered in town. I drove through the dark with one thought on my mind, she's still alive. Thomas slipped. Not with his words, but with his pride. Men like him always think they're invincible, until they get careless. He told me she was alive. Which meant she was being kept, and the Yoders only owned one place off the books, the old grain shed by Miller's Creek. I found her there. She was lying on the dirt floor, wrists tied, bruised but breathing. A single hanging bulb buzzed overhead. Her eyes flicked up as I kicked the door open. Eli, she whispered. I've got you, I said, lifting her gently, cutting the rope with my pocketknife. Her arms trembled around my neck, but she held on like she'd never let go again. I didn't call the sheriff. I called a nurse friend from town, one of the few people who didn't fear the Yoder name. We kept it quiet. If Thomas wanted a war, I'd let him think he still had the upper hand, but the next morning, I filed the will. I handed the notarized document to the county clerk, filed for a hearing. And backed it with statements from Halpern and two others who remembered Calvin Yoder whispering about a first son. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to make Thomas sweat. He didn't come to the hearing. Sent his lawyer instead, a sniveling man from Pittsburgh who wore expensive cologne and tried to smear my mother's name. Didn't work. The judge, a woman named Marla Kerrigan, saw through it. She wasn't from Shade Gap originally. She owed the Yoders nothing. It is the court's belief, she said, that Mr. Eli Warner has a legitimate claim to the Yoder estate, based on original documentation and corroborated testimony. It wasn't a full win. The estate would be split, assets reviewed. Property reassessed, but the land was mine. Thomas didn't show his face for weeks after that. Rumor had it he went up to Elk County to clear his head. Some say he won't be back, others say he's waiting. I don't care either way. Mom's staying in the main house now. We fixed up the porch, replaced the sagging swing. Some nights she hums hymns she used to sing when I was little, the same ones I'd forgotten until I heard them again, and me, I walked the fields at dawn. I touched the soil my real father once called his own. I don't feel proud. Or angry, I feel resolved. Shade Gap won't change overnight. The roots here are tangled in lies. But for the first time, I've planted something of my own. Something honest, and if Thomas comes back, well, this land remembers everything, including blood. If this story pulled you in, if you felt the weight of every secret, every betrayal, and every step Eli took to uncover the truth, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more gripping narrations just like this one. Got thoughts? Drop a comment below. What would you have done if you uncovered a buried legacy like Eli's? Hit that notification bell so you never miss the next twist, the next confession, the next dark secret waiting in the shadows. Thanks for watching, and remember, some stories don't stay buried forever.